Welcome to episode 2 of the Cricket Paper podcast, where Mohan and myself continue to digest the captivating ongoing battle between England and India as the hosts take the 2-1 lead in the series. We'll be looking back at the third test at Lord's, where England beat India by 22 runs over an absorbing 5 days, which ended in remarkable fashion. First of all, Mohan, a brilliant response by England, but more widely, what a fantastic series we're witnessing, which has seen all 3 matches go to a 5th day. But just the drama of those final 2 days in particular at Lord's is what Test cricket's all about.
Yeah, man, I completely agree with you. And I think that's the beauty of having these 5 test series is as you go through, the longer sort of you stay with the players, the more moments like these you end up getting. And I think, like you say, this series is turning into a really fascinating and close contest. I think the events that happened on sort of late on day 3 was just that cherry on top where everything sort of kicked off. And, as much as you don't want to see ugly scenes too much, I think there's a part of all of us that kind of primal side that just wants to see sort of that contest and a bit of sort of niggle between the players, as long as it's all sort of within the boundaries. And yeah, I think the series, if it wasn't already good because of the quality of cricket that was played, I think that added sort of fire. I think it's gonna make the last 2 tests just even more incredible.
I don't personally think India will feel they've done a whole lot wrong throughout the series, and now they find themselves in must-win territory.
Yeah, and I think we discussed that last week on the pod as well. It's sort of, if you go by like a session by session sort of basis, I think India probably have played better cricket for longer. But I think given these 2 sides have generally been sort of hard to separate, despite India playing well for so long, I think, the scoreline of 2-1 maybe is a fair reflection of things just because of how England were able to capture those key moments. And, I think as with anything, you can play a lot of good cricket, but if in those sort of clutch moments, you're not able to just sort of hammer the nail in the coffin, I think you often end up on the wrong side of the result. And I think, unfortunately for India, that's sort of where they find themselves. But again, like you say, it's all sort of fine margins at the moment. And, I think with a few different calls here and there and a couple of, catches that they may have held on to, the scoreline could have been flipped and, India could have been 2-1 up. But, with 2 tests to go and given how close the series has been, I think India definitely still are well placed to make a comeback. They're not at all far behind England. And if they can just sort of get that killer instinct a little bit more in some of those key moments, I think we'll see India sort of, again, level the series again at Manchester.
I think what made this test match in particular so fascinating to watch is that unlike in the first 2 tests, batting wasn't easy. Whilst the bowlers, they're still having this issue with the condition of the ball, you felt they were always in the contest. And that made England adopt a more traditional approach with the bat, which was quite a pleasant change from what has become the norm. And that was obviously underpinned by Joe Root's century in the first innings.
Yeah, and I know we were talking sort of off air. I think whenever sort of conventional batting is needed and the conditions for batting get a little tougher, I think there's no better person for England and even in world cricket than Joe Root to sort of navigate those situations. And I think he just showed exactly why he has 37 test tons and why he's so good on that first day. And, it was heartening to see England, at least even if it's not taking a full backward step, just sort of stand still with their whole baseball approach. I thought the way Crawley and Duckett came out sort of swinging in that first sort of hour, I thought maybe, okay, here we go again. But I think it was evident that Pope and Root sort of very quickly realized that they needed to just play traditional cricket and play the situation. And like you said, Root led the way with that. And you sort of, once your main guy sort of sets the tone, it becomes very sort of easy for the rest to sort of just support him and sort of chip in and follow suit. And I think that's exactly what they did. And like you said, because the pitch offered a little bit more for the bowlers, I think England were wise to take that approach, because it could very easily have gone south very quickly. So I think Root again showed his class, and you just can't stop him at the moment. He's just always scoring runs, and it's always just really good to see, because I don't think he's ever played a bad innings. So yeah, it's always good to see Root scoring runs.
If we have a look at the bowling front, we potentially expect more changes, but it was just the one, and obviously all eyes were on the return of Jofra Archer. And it was almost like he'd never been away. It was a wicket off his third ball. He was consistently bowling sort of in excess of 90 mile an hour. Got the ball rolling on the final day with that crucial wicket of Rishabh Pant as well. And it just shows what a difference he makes to this England bowling attack.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's been excited to see Jofra Archer back. And firstly, I just want to say huge credit to him for, we all know how sought after he is in sort of the franchise world and sort of what he's been able to do. I think his elbow has been good enough to sort of get him through 4 over spells. And given how sought after he is, it could have been very easy for him to, with the, all the injuries and surgeries and 4 years out of the game, to maybe just sort of move on from an international career. The fact that he sort of waited and really wanted this, I think already just made us sort of want him to do well even more when he made his comeback. And like you say, he fit back into this team just seamlessly. The one thing with him that we want to see is that pace and that consistent pace allied with line and length. And it was as though he was never away, to be honest. I think he clocked 2 of his fastest spells in his career, or the 2 fastest spells in his career, which I didn't realize until they mentioned it later, but I think that's pretty cool. He just looked like he had never been away, and he adds that extra dimension to England. If he's fit, I think he's always going to be sort of a bonus for England. I think with him, that when he's on the field, I think we can always expect great things from him. It's more going to be how they manage him off the field, because I think he's very keen to play as many tests as he can. I think he made that clear in a few quotes in interviews afterwards. But, just like with Stokes, I think they're going to have to manage him a little bit in terms of, if not playing him every single game, if they do play him every single game, sort of in what way they use him. I think Stokes used him pretty well in this game, sort of as that enforcer kind of role. But yeah, I think it's just great seeing him back and bowling. And if he can stay fit, and if Stokes can stay fit, and Wood comes back with some kind of fitness, I think that's looking like a really potent England attack. But yeah, I guess we should manage expectations a little bit. But as fans, I think we're right to place high expectations on Archer, just because we know how good he is and sort of the heights he reaches. I don't think there's really any other England bowler that can reach that kind of height. So I think, we're not trying to be cruel or unfair by placing that expectation on him. It's just because we know how good he is. And we, like you said, we love seeing it. So yeah, I was really happy to see him back and bowling well.
Would you expect him to play? Because as you said, he said that he wants to. Would you expect them to aim for a remaining 2 tests, or be a bit wary, obviously given his injury record?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe part of it will depend on what the pitch is expected to be like at Manchester. There's a week break, which is, I guess, a decent break. Yeah, I mean, if he's truly fit, and I guess England have a chance to really, if they get 3-1 up potentially, and Archer can play a big part in that, and he is fit, like I say, I think probably playing him at Manchester is probably the right choice. But again, there are a lot of things that could change that. The pitch as well could be an influencing factor. But if he's fit, he feels he's fit, and he wants to play. And given that high England are probably on after that win and that sort of surge on those last 2 days, I think if he does play, I think that would be good for him and also, for England.
Brandon Carse as well. Obviously, he's also been great form this series, and just that spell at the end of day 4, those two quick wickets, which sort of turned the balance of the game a little bit. I mean, he's been very impressive since coming into the Test side, and obviously might not get all the attention of sort of Archer returning, but he's been a key player for England.
Yeah, I think, and I'm glad you brought him up actually, because I think that spell he bowled on day 3, day 4, day 4, the last session of day 4. I think that's really what set up the game. I think getting, those top order wickets, setting the tone, I think that really buoyed England. Because in those sort of small run chases, it's very easy for like one of the openers to just get away to a quick start, and all of a sudden it's the back of the chase has been broken. I think Cast really kind of made sure that didn't happen, because I think Archer, even though he got the wicket of Jaiswal, he didn't back that up that great after that. But it was Cast that came in and really kind of pulled things back. And like you say, I think since he's come into the Test team, he's been a little bit understated, but I think pretty much every time he's played, he's done well. He did well in New Zealand. He got runs in this game as well. And I think his bowling is going from strength to strength. So, I really like Cast as an option. How about you? If, say, everyone is fit, England do have Wood, Stokes, Archer, Tongue, Cast, all fit, and Works, let's say. And Atkinson, I completely forgot about Atkinson. Would you have Cast in your starting 11? At the moment?
I think that. I mean, you saw as well with the bat as well, with a half century as well. Key runs there, because we've known he can bat sort of at domestic level, but we've not really seen it yet international level. But no, I think you see sort of Cast, Archer, Stokes. I think I'm very happy with those three. I think it's finding that fourth, whether it's Woach with a new ball at home, going for another extra pace option with Tong or Wood, with Atkinson as well. I mean, there's a lot of talk about England's pace attack, sort of post Anderson and Broad.
Yeah.
It may not be of that calibre, but we've certainly got the options to rotate. Obviously, the big question is if they can all stay fit, which is obviously very rare at one time.
Yeah.
I think Cast definitely enough for just Ryan being in the starting 11.
No, I agree.
And just a word on the captain Ben Stokes. I wouldn't say he came under criticism, but there was talk about his form. But he showed just how important he is. Over the ball, 44 overs across the match, 5 wickets. Also got runs in both innings. Arguably, they're the most important. Most importantly, was when he produced that moment of magic to run out Rishabh Pant when India were in a position of control in that first innings at 240 off 3.
Yeah.
He may not be the most consistent anymore, but he can just produce those match-winning moments, which make him so important.
Yeah, 100%. And again, that was something we spoke about on the pod last week as well. Sort of, how he can be best utilized in this 11 now, given maybe he's not as consistent as he once was. But I guess the thing with Stokes is, even if he's not the most consistent, he still has these kind of performances in him. And I guess now being captain as well, he kind of has that extra dimension of that sort of decision making that affects the entire team's sort of trajectory within a game or within a session or even within an over. And I think that's what we saw the best of in this test, sort of little moments that ended up helping sort of willing England forward and clutching those key moments. And like you say, his overall performance was just, that was the difference between the two sides in the end. I think some people criticize certain tactical decisions that India made, whereas I think on the flip side, a lot of the decisions Stokes sort of went for with his gut ended up paying off. And I think that's the value of Stokes, I think, in 2025. It's not so much those big hundreds, double hundreds, or all that kind of stuff. I think it's just everything. It's that all around kind of angle that he brings now. And I think this is just another example of when Stokes has done it. He's done that so often, but it's every time, like you say, you think people are beginning to write him off, and including, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I was also wondering, has he sort of gone past it in terms of his own performances? Is he sort of mainly just playing as a captain now? But he proved me wrong. He sort of still had those moments in him, and like you say, that run out, I think, ended up being the biggest turning point in the game, because India were, I think they were, like you said, 248 for 3, looking set to go well beyond 387, and he turned it around and sort of, I mean, that again, in the way Root sort of is the guy that you turn to for those slow, steady, stable innings, Stokes is the guy you turn to for those sort of clutch moments, and he proved it once again.
And you can tell he just has these like spells with the ball when you can tell he's really fired up. And bowl for long spells as well, and at times he can look England's most dangerous bowler.
Yeah, and I think it's a real blessing now that his leg is working, because I think he wouldn't have been. I mean, it's been so long since we've seen him bowl these long spells for England. I can't remember in the last sort of 5 years him bowling with this intensity, with his pace being up. I think he was touching sort of 140 kilometers per hour fairly often, which that's proper fast bowler pace. And to ally that with the long spells as well, like you say, I think hats off to him. It was funny watching McCullum trying to get Saudi to tell him to sort of calm down a bit and maybe take himself off. But I guess when a bowler is bowling as well as he is, and I guess he knows his body as well, I guess at this point, and with everything on the line, I guess you've got to admire just Stokes still shutting out that kind of sane advice maybe that was coming from off field, and just sort of focusing on the task at hand and getting it done. And like you said, Stokes back bowling to this level and this intensity, it just helps England so much, both in terms of the potency of their bowling, but also just the balance of the side. I think if they can trust him to bowl these long spells, okay, there may not necessarily need to be sort of 10 over long spells all the time, but just if you can trust him to bowl at this level more and more, I think it will just have a knock-on effect on the whole team. And I think it holds England in good stead sort of moving forward.
It was a big effort as well, because obviously Bashir wasn't in the position to bowl perhaps as many overs as he would have with his injury. So having to have the season rotating and probably bowling more than the other wife, it was a big effort.
Yeah, and I guess we'll probably maybe touch on Bashir's injury, but I guess with Bashir out, I guess someone had to do the sort of donkey work to help some of the other bowlers rest and come back, especially with Jofra Archer. You can't really overbowl him, especially after what happened 4 years ago. So I guess Stokes took it upon himself. And I think that's the one thing with Stokes, and people always say, he won't ask you to do something that he's not willing to do himself. And I think that's very admirable, especially given he himself has gone through so many injury issues. But just that willingness to sort of take it upon himself to do that hard work, especially given Bashir couldn't chip in with overs, is very admirable. And I think it, like I say, it just adds a great dimension to the overall England bowling attack.
A big talking point from the match was the tension between the two sides, as you mentioned at the top of the show. Obviously triggered right at the end of day 3 with Zach Crawley sort of taking as much time to ensure only one over was bowled, and saw Shubman Gill get visibly frustrated. And then obviously the next day saw Siraj give Duckett a very animated send-off. Archer, you could tell, was very fired up. Jadeja and Karsh exchanging words when they clashed in the middle. So I think from a viewing perspective, as you said, it's great to watch as long as it doesn't boil over too much, which I don't think it did. But would you say that it really galvanised England and almost backfired on India a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say exactly sort of what goes on inside every player's head sort of when something like this happens. I think there are certain players we know just from experience, or they outwardly will say that sort of they thrive in those situations. I think England as a whole, I think it did galvanize them, and it did sort of make them sort of rally around one another. With India, it's hard to tell. I think some people felt that Gill, even though he was very demonstrative and potentially flared things up the most on that day 3 last over, because batters pulling out and sort of wasting time. I think all teams kind of do that, and I think it's just part. I think even KL Rahul later in an interview after that day kind of alluded to the fact that sort of it's just part of it. Like that kind of stuff I think does happen a lot, but I think when Gill sort of potentially, at least to me, it looked like he potentially was the one that sort of escalated it just that little bit more, and then after that all the finger pointing and everything started. Maybe at the time Gill was fired up, but I think when it came time for India to bat, obviously at that point it's all of England against 2 Indian batters, and maybe at that point you could say it may have sort of had a negative impact. Again, I don't know. Obviously, I can't read Shubman Gill's mind, but maybe it did have a slight opposite effect on India slightly, or maybe it was just the fact that England were just so rampant that it just maybe offset sort of how India were feeling. But like you say, I don't think it went over the line too much. I think obviously we don't know everything that was said, and you'd hope that sort of there was nothing personal or sort of like racial vilification or anything said. But if it's just that kind of in the heat of the moment, sort of I'm going to get you out, and like Jofra Archer said that he told Pant to sort of try charging that. Like, if it's that kind of stuff, I think that's fine. Really, I think it just makes viewing compelling, and India gave it as good as they got. So I think it was all fair at the end of it, and at the end of the match, you saw sort of all the players that were at each other's throats were the first to come and sort of console and hug and shake hands. So I think that itself showed that there's probably nothing personal and no real bad blood. It was just in the heat of the moment, wanting your team to win in such a crucial, tight game. I think that's probably what ended up happening, because it looked like the players seemed sort of cool with each other after.
There was very much in Ashes 2005 at Edgbaston feel about when Ruben Crawley goes over the garage at the end.
Yeah.
We're in an era now where so many international players sort of know each other very well for international cricket. I think it just shows the emotion desire that Test cricket produces.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you made a great point there, because sort of players know each other a bit more personally now with all the franchise stuff and just, I guess maybe also like social media and things. You don't see sort of bust-ups as much, like not actual physical bust-ups, but just kind of like these kind of verbal jousts. You don't see it as much as maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But like you say, the finale had that kind of Edgbaston 2005 feel to it, where above everything, I think everyone knows that everyone's just trying to do a job for their country. Everyone has so much pride playing for their country, and when you're in those moments, you just want to do whatever you can to sort of get over the line. And if you're engaged in a fight, you're not going to take a backward step. You want to give back, basically. But I think it was all in good nature, and it'll be interesting to see, given the game finished with everyone seeming to be on good terms again, it'll be interesting to see how soon at Manchester something sort of kicks off again, if it does, because the series is still quite tight. It could again very quickly kick off again, so it'll be interesting to see sort of if that happens. But I think overall this series is being played in good spirit, and I hope that it continues for the next 2 tests.
If you just look from sort of India point of view, despite the result, again, a lot of positives. KL Rahul with a century, Jadeja once again, a thorn in the inside. The runs in both innings almost got them over the line. Washington Sundars come in, as made an impact, and obviously Bumrah returned with 5 wickets in the first innings. So a lot of positive still for India to take despite the result.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said at the top of the show, it's sort of India have played so much good cricket from sort of 1 to 11, batting, bowling, that being on the wrong side of the 2-1 scoreline, it must hurt them because they have dominated so many sessions and so many sort of passages of play. But I guess it's just these fine margins that ends up separating sides, especially across like a long series. We've seen it for years with the Ashes. Sort of, it's those small moments that end up making the difference over such a long period of time. And I think, India are not that far behind, like I said earlier. I think a couple of different calls here and there, and they could very well be 2-1 up, and, they could easily come back and win Manchester in sort of an emphatic way like they did at Edgbaston. So, yeah, I don't think they're that far away, to be honest. I think at Lord's they played a very good game. And like you said, if for a couple of decisions here and there, it could have been very different. I do think there are certain players that I think still are, and it's the same for England, to be honest, but like certain batters that are getting starts but maybe not going on. And I think that's what's proving to be the difference in this series so far, is that, once you have that foot in the door, really like just opening it and just running through, I think we're seeing a lot of batters on both sides, but I think India have been maybe guilty of it a little bit more. Just, we've had a few players get to like 60, 70 and then sort of get out. Or even KL Rahul, for example, getting 100 and then getting out almost immediately. And I think it's those kind of small moments where if they can just be a bit more ruthless with their batting, because in every test they've been in positions where they could really bat England out the game. And I think this was another match where that was the case. I think in those situations, if they can just somehow find a way of just going on, I think that's going to be the biggest thing that sets them up for these wins. Because I think their bowling attack, with or without, we saw without Bumrah at Edgbaston, I think they found a way of getting 20 wickets on a flat wicket. With Bumrah, obviously, they're always going to be more threatening. I think their bowling will always sort of help them, and they have two good spinners, like I said, Washington Sundar as well, really performing. I think if their batting can just be a little bit more ruthless, I think that will really sort of help them stay ahead of England for longer in sort of these next two tests. But I have a question for you, Dom. Sort of with England at the moment, the fact that they were able to sort of pull back on the baseball and sort of play this normal way, do you think that they're going to be open to doing that again? Or do you think that, they did this, they got a win, but maybe that was just sort of a one-off? Do you think that they would be willing to play more games like this going forward? Because, Old Trafford, it sounds like from what the pundits say, it's going to spin potentially.
Yeah.
And obviously, given England have historically a bit of a kind of a weakness with spin, sort of, do you see them maybe, learning from Lords and maybe trying to play a bit more like this in these tough conditions? Or do you feel like, just knowing England, that maybe this was just a one-off and maybe they'll go back to trying to take it on again?
Well, I certainly hope that they've got it in them to do that again. It felt almost on that first day, although the conditions were difficult, it felt like all the reaction from Edgbaston, it almost felt like they were proving a point to people that they can do it. Be interesting at Old Trafford, because last time they were there, or when they were there in the Ashes against Australia, obviously they went ballistic with the run scoring. So it'll be interesting to see what the conditions are like. If it does spin, obviously that would prove a challenge, but I'd like to think they've shown that they can do it to an extent, but I'd be surprised if they were wanted to revert back to their usual way at the earliest opportunity, to be honest. But no, it's an interesting one. I mean, that first day, seeing them finish on 250 in a day, it was quite bizarre. It was like when I was growing up first watching Test cricket, that was sort of how it was. You see 250, 260 runs in a day. So it made quite a nice change to quite see it. But yeah, no, but we'll see what the conditions are like at Old Trafford. But it's nice to see that they can adapt and play a slightly different way.
Yeah, definitely.
So if we just look ahead now to the fourth test Old Trafford, obviously there is a bit of a gap in between these two tests. So for India, that'll be helpful for them because obviously Rishabh Pant will hopefully for them be fully fit, which I assume he will be to take the gloves because obviously Jarrell had to be substituted in.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm not sure what their plan was, but you'd imagine Bumrah with the series on the line has to play this test.
Yeah. I think this break will be good for a number of reasons. I guess the couple of niggles, like injury concerns that India have with a couple of the players, like you say, Pant is a big one. Even if he can just play as a batter, I think that's his most valuable sort of contribution to this team. I think Bumrah, anytime Bumrah can get a bit of extra rest, that always helps. But even just from like a mental kind of strategic reset point of view, I think these three tests, like you say, India have been neck and neck with England, and somehow they're 2-1 down. This break could really help them sort of reassess. But yeah, I think, India aren't that far away, to be honest. And I think, like you said, I expect Pant and Bumrah to be fit and be available to play. So yeah, I personally don't anticipate any kind of major concerns there. The only thing is if the rumours are true and Old Trafford does spin a bit more, at least from what some of the pundits were saying, it'll be interesting to see if they're content with just Jadeja and Washington Sundar, or if they want to, I don't know. I know I've been raving about Kuldeep Yadav for a while now, but if they somehow see a place for him somewhere in the side. But otherwise, again, I don't see them changing the team too much as long as sort of fitness is not an issue. What about your thoughts on England's side? Do you see them changing things too much?
Well, we know there's one enforced change. Liam Dawson can show Bashir, assuming he's going to play. He last did a test in 2017, so I think I saw England have played over 100 tests in between that side, so it's quite a remarkable gap. But he's quite a popular choice amongst England fans. Obviously been a consistent performer for a long time now at county level. And he'll add more with the bat than obviously Shoaib Bashir or Jack Leach if he was a likely other alternative. It's a real opportunity for him to sort of take his case going forward, because it seems to be now he's been slowly integrated back into the international team because he featured in the T20 side a couple of months ago. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes. And then I would imagine with the break they would probably stick with Archer, but then you're looking at Wokes and Cars. They've played 3 test matches now. So do you bring back in Josh Tong or Gus Atkinson was with the squad at Lords? There's obviously Sam Cook as well waiting in the wings. So I would guess that they'll stick with the batting as it is. I think they're going to back Crawley and Pope for the rest of the series, and then I think obviously there'll be Dawson coming in, but it's whether they rotate the seamers, I think.
Yeah. And I guess just a question for you. In terms of that kind of Wokes role in the side, because obviously in England he generally has had very good sort of career. I think it's well documented. He, in certain, depending on how you filter it, he sort of has done better than Anderson and Broad in certain situations in England. But I don't know, given he hasn't necessarily been hugely wicket taking. I know the pitches again haven't helped that much, but he hasn't been hugely wicket taking. And given England, when they tour, they may not. Well, we don't know, but he may not necessarily be at the forefront of their minds. Do you still see sort of Wokes playing a big part in this England side, sort of just given how he's bowling at the moment, based on your sort of interpretation of his bowling and his sort of impact? Because I know, like you said, they picked Sam Cook, who again is a sort of 80-mile-per-hour bowler. Yeah. So it seems like they haven't fully gone that route of we only want 90 miles per hour bowlers. It seems like they maybe either they've taken a backward step or they're maybe rethinking that whole ploy. But just in your sort of opinion, how do you see Wokes sort of fitting into this England side, sort of moving forward?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, and he's not, as well as not maybe taking as many wickets as he would have liked. He's not really contributed what we know he can with the bat either. So, yeah, a lot of it is sort of his away record. But obviously, if you were looking at the Ashes, there is obviously a pink ball test, which may suit him more. Yeah, a lot of people say you're quick to sort of move on from Anderson, sort of look for the next generation. Yeah, you're persisting with Wokes, who's sort of getting close towards the end of his career as well. I think he deserved to play this series. Obviously, given his home record, I think Sam Cook, that one-off test against Zimbabwe, got his first wicket, but maybe didn't impress too much.
Yeah.
So I think with that new ball role, I think Wokes is still the number one candidate. But then we've seen, I would say, Brydon Carse, with how his performance with the bat as well, to kind of fill that kind of all-rounder role.
Yeah.
Gus Atkinson can bat as well, and he took the new ball last year as well. So yeah, I'm not sure how much of a long-term future Wokes will have in the team after this series. But he's just you just feel he's a very good player to have around the group though. So whether he would start in my team for the Ashes, I'm not so sure. But I'll see how he goes. Whether he'll play both remaining tests. I mean, this break has probably done him good because he was only just coming off an injury before this series started, so it's a big effort for him to have played 3 tests. I expected him to kind of be rested for the 3rd test, but then it was Lord's where his record is as good as anywhere. So no, I'm not sure necessarily how long his future would be in the team, but I think he's sort of deserving of this spot, sort of this series, albeit it's not quite gone maybe as well as he would have liked.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And that is all the time we have for this week. Again, thank you, Mohan, for your contribution.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Don.
And remember to pick up a weekly copy of the cricket paper in your local newsagents, or please subscribe for access to all digital content.